Hey, and welcome to Things Worth Learning. I'm your host, Matt Stauffer, and this is a show where a curious computer programmer, that's me, interviews fascinating people about their passions. Today, my guest is Diana Scharf, a Fullstack developer at Beyond Code. Diana, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself, whether it's your personal or your professional life?
So first, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Hello, my name is Diana Scharf, but everyone on the internet calls me Dee, though this is fine. I'm from Germany, and I'm currently located in Bavaria, the land of the pretzels.
I was going to say, I know nothing about Bavaria other than pretzels, so...
And beer, maybe.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. I kind of assume that for that entire region outside of just Bavaria. But Bavarian pretzel is just a phrase I have in my brain, so...
Yeah, they are great.
I've never had one. I'm going to have to try at some point.
Yeah, you have. I work as a full-stack developer at Beyond Code, where I do a lot of Laravel, PHP, Vue programming. Besides that, I write and speak about career topics in the widest sense. And yeah, to balance this whole work, I try to do a lot of sports. I do triathlon, so swimming, biking, running, all the fun stuff. Not that much in the last 2 years because, you know, pandemic stuff, life stuff. But I'm getting into it again. Yeah, I really enjoy being in nature to recharge my introvert battery. I like that. And I always have great company because I have a great dog. She's like she's sleeping behind me for my emotional support today. And yeah, that's about me.
That's cool. There's a yoga instructor named Adrian on YouTube. It's Yoga with Adrian, and if anybody has never done, yes, okay. Yeah. And she always has her dog sleeping there next to her, no matter what she's doing. And it makes you feel a little bit more like peaceful and comfortable when her dog's right there. So I'm getting that feeling. My dog is not right here. My dog is sleeping in front of the fireplace because it's chilly right now. But he's here in spirit. Here too. So, okay. So you know that the first question I'm always going to ask you is: do you have any sort of life mantra or phrase or idea that you try to live your life by?
I actually have two.
Okay,
they're
like
a bit of related. The first one is really short. It's mood follows action. And I got this one by Rich Roll. Okay. He's a vegan ultra runner, ultra triathlete, doing a lot of sports, a lot of stuff, really busy guy. Yeah. And it's about that you can't think yourself out of a mental state. And there's a lot of neuroscience behind that I can't reproduce right now because not my area of expertise. Right. But it's really helpful for me because I struggled with some mental health issues, and sometimes it's that mantra that gets me out of bed every day. But to put it in a day-to-day routine thing, I mean, if you're working out on a regular basis, you will have days that you just don't feel like it, that you're like more like, okay, I want to Netflix the whole night and eat chips on my sofa or something. Yes. But if you go for that run or that workout, whatever, you will feel better. You will think like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I did it. And it's because you can trick your brain into a different state. It's so great.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And I know that you're talking specifically about exercise, you know, how it like releases dopamine and everything like that. But it's interesting that like, are you familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy at all?
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah. So like it's interesting because that's not necessarily action. It is your brain a little bit, but I feel like it's one of those, it's the same concept of like choosing to do the things that will get you to the place where your mood is versus choosing to respond to where your mood is at the moment, right? So like both of them kind of involve this concept of like, I'm going to define where I want to end up and I'm going to take steps to end up in that place. That's really cool. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. And the second one, it's a bit related. It's right behind me. I'm not sure if I can see that in that angle. But I see it every day and it's work, ship, repeat. And it's something that I derived out of a book. It's called The Practice by Seth Godin. I don't know if you know the author.
I know Seth Godin, but I haven't read the book.
It's a great book. It's about shipping creative work, but creative not in the artist sense that everyone thinks, but because if you create something, be it code or whatever, you're a creative person. And the whole book is about it, and it's really good. definitely recommend it. And it's this mantra is about, for me, decoupling yourself from the results of your work and instead commit to the process.
That's really cool.
And it makes you independent from other people's opinions, which is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't say that you shouldn't listen to any feedback, because feedback can be really great. Yeah. But if it comes to keep yourself going in the process, it's easier to focus on the work itself than on the results. So, yeah.
That's helpful. I mean, it's for those outside of the programming industry, one of the most common shortcomings we have as programmers is perfectionism, where we don't want to release the thing until it's exactly where we want it to get. And it's one of those, like, I think it's perfect is the enemy of good, I think is one of the phrases that people use, which is like, you're so focused on getting it perfect that you never even ship the thing at all. You never launch it. You never release it. You never put it out in the world. So I love this idea of focusing on, I'm going to do, and it's something we do at Titan a lot. We say, we're not going to get you the absolute, we're not, one of our differences in our engagement model is we're not going to get everything perfect and then throw it over the wall because, done. Because one of the things that comes from is like, well, what if the requirements changed? What if, you would have actually been happy with the version that was 80% done and it would have cost you 20% of the cost or whatever.
Yeah,
like there's so many ways where this kind of like more collaborative iterative process is actually much better in a lot of ways, but it requires your willingness to focus on doing the best job you can each chunk of time, and then submit, and then doing the best job you can, and then submit, whether submitting is shipping a piece of code or whatever else. So I love that. And it seems so simple in the way you have it mantra-ized, the work, ship, repeat. It's like, yes, all right, cool. It doesn't say get it perfect and then ship. It's just do the work, do the shipping, keep doing that over and over and over.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Well, that the primary focus of this episode is going to be for you to talk about one topic you're really passionate about. So can you tell me, what are we actually going to talk about today?
We are talking about minimalism.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about your background, for those who can't see, is that it is very minimalist. And I didn't know this was something you're super into, but we've got a white, I'm going to describe it for listeners. We've got a white wall. We've got a little potted plant. I can't tell, it's out of focus, but maybe a succulent of some sort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got a neon cactus behind it.
Yep.
And then just the little edge of the mantra, a framed mantra that you just mentioned, and nothing else.
Yeah.
And you look at what's behind me, and this is not a minimalist background. There's stuff everywhere. So tell me a little bit about kind of what minimalism means to you, or your journey to getting there. Like, kind of give me an intro here. Yeah.
So to be honest, I chose this wall as my background, but this room is quite minimal. I have some sound panels here, but I have a cabinet over there. So I have stuff too. Yeah. Not sitting in a blank room, only my desk, nothing else.
But it's already a lot blanker than my room, so we can say that for sure. So
yeah, just moved in, so not a lot of stuff.
All right, fair enough.
I got into this minimalism thing because I watched the documentation on Netflix. It's the Minimalism documentation, just called like that.
Oh, okay.
When I was in university, so a few years back, and I like the concept of questioning your possessions, because back in university I was moving a lot, and even after that I was moving a lot more because I have bad luck with apartments.
Oh no.
And I can fit my whole life into one big van that I'm able to drive myself, which is something in Germany because you can't drive like the big trucks by yourself. You have to do a special license for that.
So do you have a special license, or you can fit in a small enough van that you're capable of driving yourself?
Yeah, it's not a small van, but a smaller van than a truck. Okay. And I have a regular license like for cars, and
that's
which
really
is great.
Impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I started with the stuff side of the minimalism, but after some years I recognized that you can apply this concept to a lot more in your life, like every area of your life, be it a relationship, be it your work, be it your day-to-day routines, or So
let's start with this stuff because I think it's usually the most accessible one. as you're
how many
approaching-
items do you have?
right? As you're approaching your kind of concept of minimalism, like, can you tell me a little? Because I've never seen the minimalism documentary that you're talking about. I didn't even know there was a documentary called Minimalism. I now definitely have to check this out. So we'll link
It's
it in the
great.
show notes for anybody. Yeah. But can you give me a little bit of like the elevator pitch for minimalism, at least when it comes to stuff? So you mentioned moving. Let's say I'm not going to move in the near future. Kind of what is the emotional and kind of like practical benefit that you receive from having less stuff? Let's just kind of start there.
One benefit is definitely that when it comes to owning possessions, you have to care about them. And I mean caring, I think, let's say I have a cabinet that is filled with stuff that I don't need, actually. Then I have to care that it gets moved when I'm moving, and then it's not dusty or dirty or something, and it takes space in my flat. And if I have a lot of cabinets, like to put it really simple, with stuff filled that I don't need, I need a bigger apartment.
Yeah.
And when I have a bigger apartment, I need to pay more rent for it.
Yeah.
And when I need to pay more rent, I will have to earn more money.
Yeah.
When I have to earn more money, I will have to work more or get a better job or something.
Yeah.
And it's less to care about, even if it sounds a bit negative, but it gives you a lot of freedom, makes you really flexible. And this is what I like about it.
It's interesting because I just had like a mental image of like, if I were to choose to move to a different house next year, what would be the things that would make it difficult? And it would be A, the amount of things I'd have to move, and B, the amount of space I'd have to make sure that I had access to in the new place, to make sure it fits. So it makes a ton of sense. Like if I were to be in a place where I was like, well, I wasn't worried. Let's say my kids grew up and didn't need a place anymore. Like I would ideally want the smallest place that I needed for all the reasons you just mentioned, because like let's say I even like my job. It still would be nice to be at a point where I didn't have to work as many days a week at my job, or could work more flexible hours, but I can only do that if I have a minimal lower price. So like all these things, it's like there's a lot of quality of life things that are coming from that. I've also noticed a lot that when you do have a bigger space, you fill up the space you have with the junk to match the space you have.
Oh, yes.
So I totally hear you on that one. So what did the process of minimalizing, I was going to say de-junkifying, but what did the process of minimalizing, and again, we're only going to talk about stuff real quick. What did the process look like for you of getting rid of stuff? Were you Marie Kondoing and seeing if stuff sparks joy, or kind of what was the process like for you?
I knew that you would bring it up because a lot of
Marie
people
Kondo,
are
man.
watching.
I'm a big fan.
I watched it a few times and I really like her as a person, but I just can't get into this decluttering and make everything in boxes because from this minimalism documentary, one of the most memorizable sentences that I have in my head is, organizing is just hoarding, but like tidy. But I mean, you can like have tons of stuff and put them into boxes and it looks nice, and you still have to care about them, even if you don't need them. So I decluttered a few years ago, big time, and I declutter a few times a year or something whenever I feel, okay, it's too much. But what I'm asking is, okay, let's make an example. I have this pen here.
Right.
I have a little collection of pens. I don't have any color twice.
Okay.
I have only working pens. And the only pen that I keep, because I have an emotional attachment to it, is like my first grade pencil.
That's awesome.
And I had so many, I mean, you go through school and university and whatever, and you have like hundreds of pens because everything breaks, and then you lost it and you found it again. And I just got rid of them, all of them.
Yeah.
I donated them to kindergarten and they were so happy about them. And so this is really simple about pens. But if you take this and look into your kitchen and think about, okay, when did I use this pen the last time, or this gadget or whatever? And this Marie Kondo approach with does it spark joy? I think I think it's in the core, it's right, because everything I own has either a purpose. So I have, I don't know, a charger for my phone. It's not that I like this charger that much because it's so beautiful or whatever, but it charges my phone, so it has a purpose. And you could say, okay, you don't need this neon cactus and this plant and this frame with the mantra in it, but I see it every day, and every day I see it, I smile because I like it. And so it's not that you are like a Spartanist and don't own anything because... or counting your possessions or counting your socks or whatever. It's just asking yourself the whole time, and it's getting subconscious after some time. Do I need it? Does it still serve a purpose in my home? Or can I give it to someone else who needs it more than me? And of course, this looks different. If you have children, it looks totally different. I don't have children. I have a dog. My dog has some stuff. But even,
but the dog doesn't have too much stuff.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of moving, my dog has one box.
Right.
Of the 20 boxes that I have, my dog has one. But my dog is maybe my weak point, or like tech gadgets are like, I like cameras and I like photography and like filming, and then you have some stuff. But if I see, okay, I haven't been using this thing in 2 years, okay, I can get rid of it. Yeah.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And for me, it's funny because the organization parts of Marie Kondo have never really been what stuck that well with me because I'm not that organized of a person. But I think what it was, my friend who's an interior designer who's helped me design my house, and including she's the one who did all this beautiful work here, not me. She kind of gave me her kind of like structured concept of Marie Kondo. And for her, it's literally just, here's all the items in your house structured by like books and kitchen items. Go through each of those and ask which of these do you still need. And that was really kind of her thing. So it's very similar to yours. And it was like a little bit of the spark joy, but that concept had nothing to do with organizing. It was really just like, get rid of a whole bunch of shit. Like that was the thing. So she kind of walked me through like, do you need all of this? Do you need all of that? And I realized it's been 2 years since I've done that. And I'm like looking at my desk and I'm like, pretty darn sure that's at least multiple things on my desk. Like you're talking about the pens, and I just reached over and grabbed this. And for those who can't see, there's 15 pencils of different sorts. We've got 3 different types of pens, but included in here is this pen. It's an O'Reilly pen that I got from O'Reilly when I published my book with them. It's a really crappy pen. I don't like writing with it. I have 4 of them in here, and every time I accidentally grab them, I go, ugh, I wish I didn't have this. And so I'm like, why am I holding on to these freaking pens, Diana? Like, so anyway, I'm feeling really inspired.
Attachment,
Well, but I can first of all, it's emotional attachment, but I've got my book published for O'Reilly there and there and there, like 3 different translations of it. I'm good, like I remember the experience of writing with them. I don't need that one. And there's not to say like I don't I totally, like I've got this cool little thing here that one of my friends made, and it's the Titan logo that he kind of like embossed,
really cool.
whatever. Yes, Ben Holmen, freaking amazing. And it's his company's on the other side. So he did this whole thing. I'm hanging on to this thing because every time I see it, I remember our friendship, and I remember him talking to me about what he did, and I remember our companies working together, right? So that I'm hanging on to. But I don't need 6 O'Reilly pens that I hate every time I pick them up. So anyway, I'm feeling inspired. I'm like, can we just cut this early, and can I go organize my life? Or excuse me, can I go declutter my life?
Throw things away. Everything must go.
I love it. Okay, so we've talked about stuff a little bit. So you mentioned that there's a couple different areas in life outside of stuff that you like to also consider minimalism. So could you tell me kind of what's after stuff, which I know is the simplest one, and a lot of us think about minimalism as people who aren't quite as minimalist as you, and we think stuff. Outside of stuff, what's kind of the next most important one in your life?
Not most important, but it's a short one, so I squeezed this one in.
Cool.
Social media.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I'm not a person who says that social media is great or bad. It's something in the between. It depends on how you use it. But I often hear that people, especially on Instagram, I think, don't see posts from people that are actually following because of this whole algorithm thing and whatever. And what I'm thinking, I'm seeing everything from all the people that I follow because I just follow about 100 people. And
Right.
I actively on my Twitter, on my like career Twitter, my professional Twitter, I try to limit persons that I follow to 100 people because I want to see what they are doing, and I'm really with intention. I'm really interested in what they're doing. I want to see it. And if I would follow like 10,000 people,
Yeah.
I would see.
You wouldn't see anything from anybody. Yeah.
Anything, just random stuff.
Yeah.
So I think this approach it's not for everyone because sometimes you want variety or whatever. But this is how I deal with social media, and you don't get into doom scrolling that easy.
Come on, because nobody needs that.
Yeah. So my Twitter is on chronological timeline.
Yeah, I love that. This is a little bit of a. I don't know if this actually is going to feel minimalist because it feels like a lot of structure. So this is what I do. So you know how you have lists on Twitter? You can kind of like create a list with a certain list of people. So I have 3 different lists on Twitter that are based on my emotional capacity to keep up with people. And so there is like when I've got lots of energy, I read this whole timeline. When I got a little bit of energy, I read this timeline. And when I am burnt out, these are like the absolute most important things that I need to keep on top of. And even if I like miss some stuff that's going on in my friends' lives or whatever, like this is either the things or the people, whatever. And I use Tweetbot, which makes it super easy to decide which list I'm reading from. And it's not like I change it on like an hour about or week by week basis or day by day basis. It's more like, this period of my life is a little bit overwhelming. I need a little bit less Twitter. So I just go to Tweetbot on my phone or whatever else, and I just switch it to like the medium list or the shortest list. And I'm like, I could breathe now a little bit. So it's silly because if you say like, well, why don't you always just keep it at the shortest list? But there are times when I want more of that social interaction because like I'm a dad who is working in a remote office in a pandemic, right? I don't see people in person very much. So sometimes I want to kind of like turn on the fire hose a little bit, but I want control over it. So I appreciate what you're saying there because it's the intentionality, I think, that maybe is more important than the number, right? It's like, I want to intentionally be able to engage and have the energy and space to engage with all the people who are my social media connections, right? So I hear that. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, this is interesting. Maybe I should try something like that too, like dividing the 100 people in more lists.
Yeah. Now, what I don't do, I don't have like a list of like tech friends, friends, whatever else, like something like that. That might be a thing. For me, it's really just a bigger list, a smaller list. Like the small list is entirely contained in the medium list, and the medium list is entirely contained in the big list. It's more just kind of like, and sounds terrible because it sounds like I'm rating people, but it's just kind of like, at some point, I have a more emotional connections and relational connections that I have energy for all the time. But of course. Sometimes I have more to give. And so in those moments, I want to engage with the larger number. So
yeah, it's not about rating because some days I don't check Twitter at all. And that doesn't mean that I don't care about anybody that I follow there. It's just that I don't have the capacity on that day, be it like mental or just a huge workload or something.
Okay, I like this. So we've talked about stuff. We've talked about social media. What's next on the list for whatever prioritization reason you have?
It's career, to be honest.
Okay.
So, but I mentioned that before. If you don't have that much staff or obligations or that big apartment because of the staff, you are not that financially dependent on your job, your income, whatever.
I love that.
And you just have more freedom. And like 2 years ago, I had to quit my job because I just couldn't bear it anymore. And I didn't have anything following up. I just quit. I didn't have anything. I was like unemployed, like really unemployed. And of course, if you have like children or someone that you have to care about, it's different.
Yeah.
But I knew, okay, I have my rent and some other spendings, my car, whatever. But I can keep going for a few months without like going into debt or something. So I'm not in debt and I wanted to keep it that way.
Yeah.
And it made me more relaxed in finding what should be next for me. And I had like, it went quite fast then. I mean, it's like life happens and it's been like 6 weeks or something that I hadn't done anything and I found something new, which was great. But I think I would keep more month of unemployment because if you're like forced to work to keep your possessions in your apartment and to keep debt free, it's like a lot of stress.
Yeah. I really appreciate that idea. One of the things I've engaged with a lot in the last kind of 5 to 10 years is the financial independence and the retire early people. I don't know if you've followed any of their stuff. Is that familiar to you? Or? Okay. So for those who aren't familiar, basically there's a big group of people who, and it's very diverse. So some of them are extremely intense, like be as frugal as possible, make as much money and optimize as much as you possibly can so that you can never work a day again as of whatever, age 40 or 45 or whatever.
Ooh, most of them are really early.
Right. Like that's the extreme. The much more likely thing is for people to say, I want to reevaluate my relationship with work, with spending, with like the idea of retirement being like a fixed date at age 65 versus maybe a change sometime in the next 10 years or 5 years or whatever, if you're earlier in your career, where I no longer am as dependent on a traditional 9-to-5 job to have what I need. So I'm going to make decisions now to try and improve my quality of life not in 30 years, but in 10 years or something like that. And so, one of the things I think that's really fascinating about that idea is the idea that it's not just about earning more or putting your money in places that give you more value, but it's also about your life costing less. Like one of the core calculations they do is, like, let's say you were to fully retire at age 50. Well, the amount of money you need to fully retire at age 50 depends more on your annual cost of living at age 50 than it does on the amount of money you're able to set away all the years leading up to that. And so they're like, you've got two big levers you can pull here, but like if you cost $30,000 a year versus $100,000 a year to live every year at age 50, that's going to make a massive difference in this control you have. And the people I like the most in that community are not waiting until age 50 to ask those questions. They're asking those questions now so they can have that flexibility now. I'm sorry for those who are 50 and plus who are listening. I know there's plenty of you, but like this community tends to people who are not, 50, 60, especially close up to 65. A lot of them are in their 30s or maybe early 40s. If you ask those questions when you're younger, then you don't have to wait until you hit that point to live this much more flexible life where your job does not define you and you're not saying, well, I must do that. I can't take that trip because what about my job? I can't take that move because what about my job? I can't take the 3 weeks off for my sanity because what about my job? So I love what you're saying here because it is this this disconnect from this idea that in order to survive, to eat, to sleep, to anything, you must have this like locked in 9-to-5 job that is like kind of your master in a lot of ways. I really appreciate that idea. For you, has that ended up in any pursuit of less than a 40-hour work week or any other kind of like non-traditional work arrangements? Or is it more just kind of just holding your connection with a job a little bit more loosely?
So retirement is like a long time in the future for me. I've just turned 28. And I don't think that for myself, I mean, I understand the idea of like this early retirement people, but I actually like my work and like in its core, I really like it. And I hope to work as long as possible, or as long as I want to. But it's great to be more flexible because if I say at 50, okay, I don't want to touch a computer anytime soon, okay, this is not really realistic, but let's say I don't want to work as a programmer anymore. I want to get on the countryside and have my chickens and my cows and my little animal farm, like without the the farming thing, because I'm like a vegan, so I won't eat anymore. Then you want the freedom to be able to do that, right? Yeah, and I want the freedom to be able to do that. And what I wanted to add to this whole loosen up with your work thing is, I think if you experience minimalism like really early in your life, it can help you too. Because when I ended with university, I wasn't sure what I should do next, because I studied something that it's not like easy to get a job on the countryside of Germany with that. And programming was like my backup because I did this before. But at this point, I like graduated and I didn't have anything to follow. I was like, okay, it's not great, but I know that I can live in a small apartment with my dog. It's like my big expense. With less stuff, a small car. I'm totally fine with it. And that made me relaxed. That made me relaxed in interviews, maybe.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know?
Because you didn't need this thing, right?
Yeah. And I think it's like a much more easier life if you don't have these obligations.
That's cool. And to your point, I have found that a lot of the people who want to retire early, I'm not very interested in what they're saying, but I've also discovered that, just to give that community a little bit of credit, the vast majority of them are actually saying, I want to get to the point where I'm not done working. It's like work does not define me. It is not my master. I choose what I want to do, and I'm not so worried about the money that's coming in that I choose things that I don't want to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that lines up exactly what you're saying. Like, I would like to hit a point where if I wanted to travel the world for a month, I could and not worry about it. Like, to get a point where I could choose to do woodworking full time. Like that, like I'm like the most stereotypical bearded white male programmer of all time. I'm like, yeah, can I get to a point where all I do is work with wood all day long and get paid for it? Yes, let's do it. And so
I saw your Instagram, so I understand what you mean.
Yes, you know this is what I'm doing for my life. And so, like, will I do that? I don't know, but I would love to be at the point where that doesn't seem absurd, right? And so I think that's very similar to what you're saying. I'm like, well, if I were to imagine my life as a full-time word worker whose kids have moved off to college or whatever, like, what does my life actually look like there? And it does not look as busy and cluttered and as big of a space or whatever. It seems more minimalist, only because of my like stereotypes of what like the retired woodworker guy looks like. So even some of those ideas are like culturally built into me without really having put a name to it until you said that. So I really appreciate that idea.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like if I'm hitting my 30s sometime and I want to do a long distance triathlon one time in my life, like this Ironman thing. Yeah. And you have to train a lot. Okay. Like 40 hours a week or something.
Oh my
if you
goodness.
Want to be good, or like you can do it in 20 as well. So it's possible. And a lot of people are doing this besides their full-time jobs, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
But if I have like the financially flexibility in my 30s, let's say, I can cut my work time in half or something. So I can find the time to train without stressing myself out because I want to achieve this personal goal. So yeah.
I know that to each their own, right? But the idea of choosing to go through that, I'm like, but why, Diana? But I understand. There's like, I like physical exercise. I just don't like the duration of it. For me,
but you like to end it.
Yes, exactly. What I've discovered though through working on this deck that I'm doing is that I like functional things. And so I think what I've realized is that for each person, what they're getting out of it is different. So for me personally, I'm like, if I'm working really hard on my body for 8 hours straight, and at the end of it, I have built something or lifted something or repaired something, I'm happy. And I understand everybody has their own like kind of different motivations. So it's been helpful because I can understand a triathlon person better now, because I'm like, you don't have the same motivations that I do, but I understand now what it feels like to be intrinsically motivated by the work that I'm doing with my body. So I'm never going to be that person, good on you for that. But I think I understand you a little bit better now. So, all right. So Ironman triathlon is cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. What the great thing about this long training is?
What's that?
The silence in your head. It's just nothing. It's wonderful.
Wow. I can't imagine what silence in my head would be like.
Yeah, it's great. It's silence, and on the other side, it's not. Because when I prepared my talk for last year's Laracon about the career stuff, a lot of work on this talk I did through running and riding my bike and walking with my dog, not on my desk. Like all of it came outside. It's great.
I get that. When I created my first Stauffer as a service, I almost all the work that I did figuring out, this feature is going to be helpful, or I'm going to implement it this way, or this is going to be the user experience, happened when I was walking my dog or when I was taking walks around the neighborhood. And it took me a while to realize that like that was my most productive time. And I was so grateful that at that point I actually just couldn't afford like music players to put in my ears. I was like, I'll just walk. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a really valuable and productive time. So yeah, I hear that. That's cool. Okay, so we have talked about stuff. We have talked about social media. We have talked about career. Are there other elements of minimalism you want to talk about?
Just one. To sum it up. To sum up minimalism in like few words. Yeah. It's about letting go. And like not the Frozen style, but
that's exactly what popped into my head. Literally in my house. Let it go.
I knew it. And,
but go ahead. Tell me more.
It's not about stuff and not about your career. It's just about letting go. Just knowing that you, yourself as a person, you are complete just as you are. You don't need anything. You don't need a career. You don't need fancy laptop or stuff or relationship or whatever. You are complete as you are. And this is hard to learn. And this is hard to keep in mind in your day-to-day life. I mean, I struggle with that every day. But this is the most helpful insight that I had about minimalism after some years. You are just enough. You have enough. And especially people in our first world, we have more than enough.
Mm-hmm. You just gave me goosebumps.
Deep stuff.
I have joked with a lot of people, and it's not a joke. This podcast is my therapy. So thank you. I think I owe you $180 for this therapy session. Wow. Yeah. That's really, really, really good. Because I hear you that like the essential concept of it is you don't need the stuff. You know, I can be sitting in front of a white wall instead of this beautifully decorated wall. And I'm not going to feel, I'm not getting rid of any of that. I think she did a great job, and the beauty of it gives me joy. But it could be a completely plain white wall, and what I was bringing to this conversation would be no less. And my, you know, so exactly. I really appreciate that. I feel like we could go into much deeper, but I'm not a therapist. But it just feels like there's so many messages and ways in which kind of like, I mean, and the simplest one that everyone knows is like the job of a commercial is to make you feel like you're not in love unless you have this thing, right? And I try to teach my kids that, like, yeah, I know that you want that toy. Do you want to know why? Because that thing, and I've been saying this since they could speak, that thing that you just watched wants you to believe. It's trying to sell you something. It's trying to make you think that you have to have that thing to be happy. So it's now to the point where my son, when my daughter's like, ooh, I really want that, he's like, it's because it's a commercial and their job is to try and make you think like you need it. I was like, yes, I succeeded.
But it's not
done
just right.
Right. But it's not just commercials, right? Like everywhere in every way, shape, or form. And even things like Instagram, like seeing what your friends have, like, I need that because they're clearly happy and they have that. That could be an entire episode on its own. But
you're not paying money for something. You're always paying freedom. I mean, let's cost something $200, and every one of us, except if you're like incredibly rich and your money works for you. I mean, there are people out there, but everyone has to work for their money. Working means time of your life. And so if you have like to work for $200, a few hours or even a few days, you can ask yourself, is this thing worth my freedom of this time?
Wow.
It's not wow, it's simple, but okay.
No, but it's wow because it's that direct line that you just paid. You paved at the beginning, which was the, you know, things cost money. Money requires you to do work to do money. And if you know, so it's like, it's that line. I think it's a line that we don't often draw, which is that, well, you obviously do. And probably people who watch that documentary think about minimalism, but like normal humans like me don't often draw the line between dollars and hours worked, dollars and freedom of your life, dollars and that kind of stuff. And so in the end, that every dollar I've spent, every piece of stuff that I have requires not only the cost of purchasing it, but the cost of housing it effectively and cleaning it. Like that really does make everything basically eat out a little tiny chunk of my freedom and my free time or whatever. So I don't have anything helpful to say because I'm going to be processing this for the next hour. So
you go decluttering.
I'm going to. Whatever my next call is, I'm going to take it while decluttering my house. So, shoot. Well, is there anything else about minimalism you wanted to talk about before we move on to the last question?
Let's be minimal. That's it.
Hey, okay. Well, minimally, I'm going to move on. So the last question, as always, is what insight or support did you either receive or need when you were younger that you hope more people will give to others?
So this has nothing to do with minimalism.
Totally fine.
And I have to build a bit of context for this. I was raised by my dad since I was about 8 years old because my mom was an alcoholic.
I'm sorry.
And so he was a single father, single parent at this time. This was unusual back in the days. I mean, I'm old, so today it's normal, but back then, not really usual. So with that background, with my single-parent dad and my problematic mother, let's phrase it like this, I had some problems in school because of the cliches, and the other people and the other children just recognized that I was different because I didn't came from this traditional family. So I had some problems with bullying and all this fun stuff. It was hard for me as a child, but in hindsight, I learned a lot from that. Because, like everybody has struggles in life. That's obvious. And everybody deals different with their situation and has to make the best out of it, or trying to make the best out of it. Mm-hmm. And this looks different for everyone. And the great thing about my dad was that he acknowledged that I felt different. And he encouraged me that every time when I felt bad, he was like, yeah, we're different. It's just us two. We're a small family, but we're still a family. And he always trusted in me that I would find my way, even if I felt bad and different and I was sad and lonely and whatever. And he supported me whenever he could. So far, I think my way in life is okay.
Yeah, so, he turned out okay, yeah.
His trust was right.
Yeah.
And to sum this up is that you have to trust yourself, that you find your way, and then you will find it. I mean, it sounds so a bit woo and magic, but it is like this, because if you trust in yourself, your behavior changes, your whole appearance changes. And the other side of it is that you trust in others as well, that they find their way through life. So just be open-minded to other people, even if their situation or lifestyle is unusual for you. And be kind.
Well, that was really beautiful, and I'm feeling a lot of emotions today. So thank you for sharing that. Jeez. I mean, as a parent, I know you're not only talking to parents, but as a parent, the idea that at some point I'm going to have to let go and let my children let it go and let my children kind of like define who they are and trust that is something I think about a lot. And I mean, even now my son's 9 and he's already kind of defining, like I'm a musician. I love that he was into drums and he was just going to become a drummer. And he basically just decided a week ago, after quite a while of his drums just collecting dust, that he's like, you know what? Soccer is my life and I'm not going to play drums. Oh my God, that hurt.
Your heart. Yeah, I know.
As a musician, I'm like, oh, buddy. But it's just kind of like, and obviously this is much smaller than a lot of things you're talking about, but it's just like a little microcosm of the same situation of, like, that's his decision to make, and he is who he is, and I love who he is, and I trust that he's gonna, I'm gonna keep giving him guidance and wisdom or whatever, and keep him from, setting his life on fire. But in the end, like, he's gonna take what I've given him and what his mother's given him and what his other mentors in his life have given him, and then he's gonna make his own decisions, and he's gonna be his own person. And to trust, I feel like a lot of parenting fails come from never letting go. Like, have you ever seen the movie Garden State?
No.
Okay, it's not a super popular movie, but I got obsessed with it when it came out first. I think it was just because of the time period of my life was written for people in that time period. But if anyone has seen it, I can't tell you if I would recommend it or not, Diana, or other people, because I don't know if it's one of those ones where it was really good for me at that time and now I'd watch it and be like, it's kind of cringy, or if it's good or not. But for those who have seen it, there's in essence, it's like a person who's probably in his, my guess is late 20s, early 30s, whose parents basically never let go and like never gave him the space and never trusted and believed that he could kind of be who he is and handle his own stuff. And so he ended up being like a little infantilized by that as well, and just didn't like take ownership and agency over kind of like who he is. And I don't know if that was their intent, but that's what I took away from it. So it just is making me think about that a lot. They talk about like a lot about the baby boomers being like helicopter parents and being more likely to kind of put us this way. So for your dad to have done what he did, especially given the constraints he was in, where I bet there was a lot of pressure to try and be like, it's just me. I need to make sure that she does everything right, and to have given you that freedom is really cool.
He was also
trust.
scared that some authorities would take me back to my mom at this point. It was really it's really like not good. But he
so
did
for him
really
to have
great.
chosen to like not try to just kind of lock everything down and control you, but to really give you
Yeah.
freedom and space, that's really incredible.
He has like no technical background, and I became
Yeah.
a programmer because he trusted in me.
That's really cool. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing this. So
Are you crying?
no, it's dusty in here. So if people like you and think you're great, how can they follow or support you?
So I'm most active on Twitter, which is at DianaWebDev, and my website is dianaweb.dev. So basically the same with a dot in it. And yeah, that's the best way to follow me.
And those will be in the show notes as always.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for today. Is there anything else you wanted to cover that we didn't get to, or do you feel pretty good about this?
I have I hope I didn't make you too sad.
No, this is great. Are you kidding? Like I said, this is freaking therapy for me. I am in heaven right now.
Okay,
so
then it's
you
great.
did nothing wrong. Thank you. It was just really touching and meaningful, and I really appreciate you sharing so much about your life and your story. I really do.
Yeah. Thank
So-
you for having me. And just last words for me is be kind to people.
I like it. Which is awesome because literally the end of this thing, every single episode is the rest of y'all until next time, be good to each other. So I think we ended out in a good note there. So thank
Yeah.
you so much. And
Thank you.
to the rest of y'all, be good to each other.
Bye.